Well, over the past 2 weeks, Donald Trump and federal judges have been playing a game of Pong. In case you don't know what I mean, Pong is an old game on the Atari and basically is bouncing a ball back and forth. On January 27th, 2025, Donald Trump sent out an executive order and a memo saying that all federal funding, including grants, loans, and different things like that, will be paused. This threw the whole world into a panic, or at least the entirety of the United States of America into a panic. And then a judge said, nope, can't do that. And then Donald Trump decided to rescind the memo. Except for the fact that he tried to appeal the thing after rescinding it, and then the judge said, no, we're not going to let you appeal that. That's still something you can't do. So then, of course, the NIH starts easing up on their funding and all of that. I'm like, okay, we can start doing this. And then Trump goes and says, hey, no, we're actually just going to ignore what the judges are saying and continue forward with our funding anyways. Again, the weirdest game of Pong I've ever seen. Well, welcome to this episode of Love, Death, and Healthcare, Frozen Assets, and the Trump Administration. Although, honestly, I'm gonna need multiple drinks for this. So let's go ahead and get started with our signature cocktail of the episode. Alrighty, for this recipe, we're going to start off with 2 ounces of Midori to represent our money. We're going to add 2 ounces of blue curacao to each of the 4 glasses. In a shaker, we're going to put a bunch of ice in there. We're going to fill that with 1 cup of vodka, half a cup of simple syrup, 1 cup of lemon juice, and then we're going to shake, shake, shake. Now again, this does make 4 drinks. I didn't realize that when I started making it, but it's okay. And we're going to go ahead and pour over top of each of the 4 glasses till they're filled. And just like that, you have our signature cocktail, Frozen Assets. Man, these are thematic. Also just very good. Yum. Okay. That's going to help a lot. So what do I mean when I say that Trump paused all federal funding? Because federal funding is this very big umbrella term that's oftentimes very vague and not well described. Well, in 2021, the United States government provided nearly $1.3 trillion to both state and local governments through federal grants. These grants made up 1/5 of a state's total revenue, funding education, healthcare, social services, infrastructure, and public safety programs. Here we can actually see the graph of where federal funding actually goes through federal grants. And we can see that health, income security, and transportation are some of the biggest categories, with Medicaid making up $616 billion in 2023, income security making up $167 billion in 2023, education making up $68 billion, and other categories like highways and disaster relief coming in pretty close behind. So federal funding goes to a lot of places. And in fact, it actually made up 5% of the United States GDP, or gross domestic product, which is insane. So thinking about this, pausing all federal funding means pausing a very large part of our economy, which could potentially put a lot of people out of jobs, put research in danger, and more. So talking more about why federal funding and federal grants are necessary for our economy goes a lot into the area of research. Research is funded by grants. You don't do research if you don't have a grant, because research costs money. This leads to, of course, new innovations, better technology, better medicine, understanding our bodies better. It leads to things that are positive. Research in science, if done properly, leads to benefits to the entirety of society. With this federal funding pause, areas of research could be set back years. Because, well, as we mentioned, research needs money. Money is spent on supplies. In areas like cell cultures or mice, supplies are needed on a weekly basis to maintain the validity of these experiments and to keep these cell cultures in mice and other parts alive. That's pretty big if you can't get your funding to keep your experiment alive. Some of these experiments have been going on for years on years. And letting those cultures die, letting those mice die, would set researchers back so much. Now, of course, this isn't just in areas of research. This is in local hospitals, rural hospitals that require federal grants and funding to stay afloat. This is in areas like non-governmental organizations like Meals on Wheels, SNAP, things that people rely on to stay fed, to actually have food on the table to feed their family. This is, of course, in areas like local governments, areas where we're maintaining infrastructure. No one likes potholes, but money has to come from somewhere. Same thing for, of course, local police. Police are very much funded by federal grants, so I guess for another weird W for the Republicans, they're now pro-defunding the police. What the heck? All of this to say that pausing federal grants leaves a lot of people in worse off positions. Now, they talked about how they wouldn't pause Medicare during this time. However, Medicare did see payment pauses to patients. This is something that they were not clear with at all, what was actually paused or what wasn't, which led to lots of confusion, missed payments, and honestly could have thrown us into a spiral if they didn't get blocked by a judge. And again, we're still playing that weird Pong game. This is something very impactful, and I can talk about it here, of course, from the perspective of science. Science takes grants, but this impacts not just science, it impacts the economy, it impacts agriculture, it impacts our ability to feed people who might not be able to feed themselves. It impacts care for our sick patients, for our elderly. It impacts care for our local cities and maintaining these cities that we all live in. Federal funding and federal grants go to a lot of different areas, and I don't think most any of them are focused on woke gender ideology or, the Green New Deal. But this is, of course, just another political move. It's testing the waters to see, can they do this? So we've talked about where the money goes and how it stimulates our economy, but why is Trump trying to pause that? You think someone who, wanted to spur our economy and drop the price of eggs would continue putting money into the economic system, having better outcomes, and, keeping that 5.5% of our GDP continuing to flow. Well, in the memo on January 27th, Trump talked about how they would pause all federal funding until all agencies related to the obligation or distribution of federal financial assistance followed the rules that he put in place via executive order, including but not limited to financial assistance for foreign aid, non-governmental organizations, DEI, woke gender ideology, and the Green New Deal. Now, as I've talked about before, I'm not a foreign policy person, I'm just that good, but what I am here to talk about is healthcare and stuff like that. Now, woke gender ideology, where have I heard that? Oh, that's right, we have a video on the channel talking about woke gender ideology, so if you want to hear more about that, go ahead and go back and watch that video. Today, we're going to talk about some different aspects of this. We're going to specifically talk about the Green New Deal. So what does he mean by the Green New Deal? Well, in the spreadsheet sent out to a bunch of different government organizations, it very much narrows this down to climate change, efforts, climate change research, or doing anything in promotion of, reducing our carbon footprints, in promotion of stopping fossil fuels from burning and stopping anthropomorphic climate change. Now, I can hear a bunch of people already saying that climate change isn't real. As Ted Cruz famously once said that he would believe in climate change when Texas froze over. Oh, wait, that already happened. That's awkward. But scientists have very much come to the consensus that anthropomorphic climate change or anthropomorphic global warming is an actual thing that happens. 90 to 100% of scientists, depending on the question, timing, and sampling methodology, agree with the idea that human-caused climate change is a thing. Now, you might be saying, okay, sure, it can be a thing, but why is that an issue? Well, in the past couple of decades, we've put up 425 parts per million of carbon dioxide. We've raised our global temperature 1.5 degrees Celsius since the pre-industrial era. We've had methane at 1,922 parts per billion, as well as the Arctic Sea has shrunk 12.2% since the 1979. Now, all of this sounds a bunch of like science words being thrown at you, but why should we really care? Well, if the temperature on Earth rises, it makes it harder for species, including ourselves, to actually live here. It also leads to different things like more natural disasters in forms of hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, and that, as well as hotter and hotter summers, colder and colder winters, which always are going to change different things like wind flow, formation, tides, and stuff like that. The increase of the temperature of the planet is an agreed upon bad thing, to the point of it will become eventually unlivable or have irreparable and unreversible damage on our society if we continue to allow it to go. However, this memo pauses all funding going towards climate research. To reveal a little bit of bias here, hello. During my 3 years of undergrad, I did computational chemical kinetics with a focus on alternative fuel sources, basically fuels that don't produce carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases. So, look, maybe I'm a little bit biased. I'm a scientist who actually worked firsthand with these types of climate initiatives. There's a reason that it's been invested in so much. One of the reasons why this video took so long to make is because during this week, every time I would look at the news, I would see 4 new articles talking about these federal funding pauses. And then out of nowhere, the NIH, or the National Institute of Health, decided that they're going to talk about something new, lowering the indirect rates to a 15% cap. Now, if you're not a scientist or just anyone in general who knows about direct versus indirect rates, you're probably wondering, what does this mean? They're showing a bunch of big numbers being reduced. That means we're saving money, right? Yeah, but indirect rates and indirect funding is very important. Oh, but before we continue, a judge did put a block on this. Maybe it's another round of Pong or like air hockey this time. Who knows? But let's talk about what indirect rates and indirect funding actually are, in case this continues forward, which I sincerely hope it does not. The main thing that you need to think about when you think about direct versus indirect funding for research, or just any NIH grant, is the 2 letters F and A. Now, what do I mean by F and A? Well, the F stands for facilities and the A stands for administration. So direct costs are what you think they are. They're going directly into the research. They're things that are spent directly on the chemicals involved in the research. They're things that are spent directly on the scientists involved in the research, yada, yada. Now, indirect costs are these things known as F&A, facilities and administration. Indirect cost pays the salaries of everyone working on that campus in that building. Indirect cost pays for the maintenance, the lights, the electricity. It pays for the different things that they're doing with this facility to upgrade or improve, or maybe buying new things for it. It pays for the administration in that area. I kind of like having an HR in case something goes wrong. I like the ability to have, proper finance managing. All of that goes to paying the administration within these buildings. It goes to paying anyone from the dean to the people in HR to the janitorial staff. All very important jobs. Indirect costs are basically anything that does not have to do directly with the research. So this reduction of indirect rates means that these facilities aren't going to get as funded. And if facilities don't get as funded, then that means job loss. That also means more expectation on the researchers if they can, produce results. And if they can't, it means cutting labs. Because this money is not going to wildly appear out of nowhere. Research is, while not profitable in the beginning, actually does turn a profit of about $1 to every $2.5 on the outcome. However, stopping indirect funding rates and reducing them to 15% in areas where there's large facilities, large administrations, is going to just make it worse. Yeah, indirect funding plays a really big part into research. It also plays a big part in areas like hospitals. NIH funds hospitals too. It's the National Institute of Health. They give grants to hospitals, and what this means is that hospitals will receive less funding for facilities and administration. So nurses, doctors, people in the pharmacy, people on the computers, reception, ER, as well as the facilities wouldn't be as maintained. They wouldn't be able to buy supplies that they might need. You can see here a list of hospitals that are taking a hit and the expected hit that they would take. It is something absolutely insane. Now, of course, this idea of like, yeah, we're saving money. I don't think they understand how much research actually stimulates the economy. Nor do they understand how much we kind of need hospitals, we kind of need areas that do this. This is going to put a very big halt on research in some areas. This is going to put a very big halt on the ability to improve our healthcare system. Areas of research are going to again have labs cut, which means that innovative ideas might not hit for decades on end because budget happens. Money doesn't come from nowhere. Money comes from grants, but by saying we can only do a 15% indirect rate means that those facilities are going to become very underfunded. And when facilities become underfunded, they don't just get more money. They find ways to cut costs. They find ways to reduce their staff. They find ways to essentially make it to where they're not needing as much money, which just impacts research overall. And like this was in the middle of the federal funding freeze. Wilding. Again, I would wake up and be like, oh, let's look at the news today. I'm sorry. Is that what? The amount of time that this video is taken just because of the amount of articles that I have been reading is insane. Like, goodness gracious. There's a reason this is a 4-drink series, like 4-drink episode. 4-drink episode. That's actually really good though. So do you remember just earlier when I was talking about how every day I would wake up and there'd be new news articles? Yeah, it's literally like a day before I started recording, and this comes out to say that a lot of different government employees have been put on probation, and have basically been sent a very big copy and paste email saying their services are no longer needed with this administration because their priorities are not aligned, yada, yada, yada. Now, of course, again, this is in areas that are just not in healthcare, but this is also areas of healthcare like the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, the list goes on. One we're going to focus on here today is the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control. On Friday, members of the Epidemic Intelligence Service, a legendary training program run by the CDC, were told that most of them, or a large portion of them, were going to be fired. Now, when I say a large portion, what do I mean? 1/10 of the CDC is going to be fired. As of yet, there's been no pushback from any federal judges. However, multiple federal government employee unions have sued, saying that this is a violation of employee labor rights, which, yeah, it kind of is. Now, you might be saying, well, the CDC is an inflated area of government that I don't believe does, like, did you see how they handle the COVID pandemic? And look, we could talk all day long about COVID and the, missed response opportunity in the very first Trump term, and as well the bad response system that Biden put through even during his term for different strains of COVID and all of that. I'm not going to get into that in this video, though. This video is already going to be too long. I'm recording so much for this, so no. But the CDC does play a very important role. Diseases are something that we need to monitor and keep research on, as well as inform the public of. It's almost like during these firings, there's a area with disease. Something maybe. Oh, that's why egg prices are so high, because of the bird flu. Yeah, bird flu is currently making a resurgence, which is leading to, of course, a inflated price on eggs, but also has led to different people ending up in the hospital. There's been 68 confirmed cases in the United States in 2025, and that's, of course, confirmed. There's areas where there's plausible concern or plausible ideas that there might be bird flu, but it's not confirmed yet. It's almost like a disease starts spreading more and more with the more people it infects, too. But right now, what we need to do is fire 1/10 of the, government department that handles diseases. This is going to be a very big hit on epidemiology research. This is going to be a very big hit on how we handle diseases in a country that already did not handle a pandemic well. I don't even know how to end this video. Every time I would go to make this video, there would be a new article about how we're trying to get rid of basically science funding or scientific institutions. This is insane. Look, this is my little, like, hey, this is the opinion piece at the very end. Hi, hello. This is not based in this is not based in facts. This is my own opinion. If I was a part of an organization, you get the whole slide, like, it does not represent the views of this organization that I'm a part of, yada, yada. This is insane. First, going after all federal funding because of woke gender ideology, DEI, and all of that, to basically pause a large part of our economy is wild. The fact that they have played a continual ping pong game to the point of where Trump has literally said that regardless of federal judges, they would continue forward with the funding freeze, which is unconstitutional, of course, because we have something called checks and balances in the United States, or at least I thought we did. Then, of course, getting into the indirect rates, targeting institutions and targeting science research. These institutions, while some of them might be, very greedy, like when people think institutions, they think very greedy colleges. College is expensive, insanely expensive. However, most undergrad institutions aren't actually R01 or R1, which is Research 1 institutions. What that means is most of them are not primarily research institutions. Ones that are primarily research institutions are funded by these grants and funded by the indirect fees from the grants. So this doesn't really curtail like this idea that college is too expensive and they're going to extract more money from the students. No, this just curtails research institutions at a very large point, which just, again, hinders our ability to compete in the scientific field. It hinders our ability to find novel advancements in technology, in science, in health, and in different areas like that. RFK Jr. just got, confirmed. His entire thing is make America healthy again. Why are we walking away from that statement? And I know why. Hello, yes. I understand, I know why. But we're walking away from the thing that they're trying to do. They're saying one thing and doing the other. Which, you'll find is politics in general, sadly. Yeah, there's a reason I didn't say Republicans or Democrats. Both of them do it. It's insane. Then, of course, getting into just mass layoffs in all federal agencies. This is not, of course, just in agencies that are healthcare related. This is in all federal agencies. Having these mass layoffs with copy-paste emails are wild. Now, you might be asking, well, who is leading the charge on this? And that would, of course, be the OMB director, Mr. Vought, pictured here, and our lovely, lovely billionaire friend, Elon Musk. Why are we letting a billionaire who's not even elected make decisions in government? They couldn't even put a website up correctly. Look at this. Anyone could edit their website. Why are we letting them decide how funding works? I'm crashing out a little bit. I'm sorry. The TLDR of all of this is, while people might say, oh, this is great, we're saving money in these areas, what it's really doing is it's harming the United States longevity. It's harming our research longevity. While people are thinking we're saving money because we're no longer paying these indirect fees that the universities charge a shit ton for, they don't consider the actual outcome. They don't consider the actual effect on the economy. Remember, most people, the majority of people who voted in this election voted for the Republican Party because the economy is terrible. This is not going to make it better. Literally, again, 5.5% of the GDP comes from federal grants. Trying to remove a large portion of those because they're looking into things like climate innovation or alternative energy is insane. This series has started off with two absolutely wild stories. And the sad part to me is we're not even a month in. When I'm recording this, it's February 15th. We're not even a month into this administration. All you can do is try to stay informed. That way, when you're talking to, because hello, yes, my family is Republican, sadly. When you're talking to them and they're saying, look how good Trump is doing, he's cutting our expenses, he's cutting our spending, you can provide them the resources that actually show what is happening. Because again, everyone loves the idea of saving money, but they're targeting the wrong areas. We can look at other areas like our military spending, but instead they're targeting areas that are actually influential on the health and longevity of the people within this nation. As of now, most of these executive orders, most of these memos have been blocked by federal judges, which is very, very good. However, this of course is going to be a long battle within this. And your local representatives are people that can help fight that battle. Now, of course, every person who talks politics says you should call your local representatives and all of that, and it does matter. They are elected to represent you. But, of course, as well, there are people out there who are trying to do good by the country. There are people, like I said, those federal judges who are blocking these unconstitutional overreaches of power. But until then, the best thing that you can do is stay informed. Because a misinformed population rolls over because they don't know what's going on. And that's the entirety of why I'm trying to make this series, is to inform people in areas that I might be smarter at that others aren't. There's a whole reason I watch different creators, because they know a lot more in certain areas than I do. Yeah. No, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Love, Death, and Healthcare. I know that this is kind of a downer ending, but I don't think many of these are going to have very positive, happy endings, sadly. But I do appreciate you watching. And as always, I am Ava, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, whatever time it is. Bye!